Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson, back with my mini-series co-founder, Greg Bailey, with our Longevity for Investors mini-series. If you don't know Greg, huge successes in the past. Medical doctor who became an investor packaging deals. Medivation had an incredible success with Extendis selling a cancer drug to Pfizer for $14.3 billion. Biohaven sold Nurtec, migraine medicine, for $11.6 billion. And he's chairman over at Juvenescence, round 3, with his group of medicines. But for this series, he gets to ask questions and get other people's experience. And then sometimes I sneak in some questions to him as well. And what's really fun is repeat guest on the show, Lucio Iannone over at Bayer, or Bayer if you're in Europe. He's on the biotech side of their corporate venture capital arm. If you don't know Leaps by Bayer, they have deployed $1.5 billion already into investments. You can always go back and listen to he and I's previous conversation on my Innovation Leadership podcast to get some more of the background. But what happened was we left off that last conversation talking about this part of biotech that sometimes people call it different things. Some people call it longevity or health span. Other people might just call it cardiovascular disease, and trying to help people live longer by catching diseases, chronic diseases, before they get really bad. Lucio, thanks for coming back. And why don't you start weighing in on this subject?
Sure. No, last episode, I had the pleasure to be with you. We discussed on basically how the label longevity might put off some investors, but while might excite some others. So knowing your audience is pretty important, but I'm very happy to have Greg on the call as well. So at least we can discuss on both sides as a company that is looking at lifespan increase, and as our fund invests in curing diseases and trying to treat patients. I think we are on the same subject, on the same mission, but with a different label. It would be nice to explore this one on both sides of the coin.
Yeah. For people not from the biotech world, can you give any kind of a sense of how attitudes are changing, maybe compared to years in the past, of this idea of like an Ozempic, of like, hey, what if we can keep people from crossing the line into OBD, into diabetes, and these ideas of maybe more of a focus on catching it early?
Sure, I can start, and I would love to have Greg on this one too. So the obesity has been always a problem on the therapeutic area that we look as cardiometabolic. It brings several additional problems apart from being overweight. It can bring cardiovascular problem, it can bring liver problem, it can bring diabetes, it can bring several different factors. And indeed the brain, as Greg suggests. The problem in the past was, do you classify as a disease? Yes, when you have morbidly obese patients, then at that point, and I'm not talking as an MD, I'm talking as a PhD. So biologically, yes, it's a problem. How do we attack that? And both Novo and Lilly did an amazing job finding this GLP-1 pathway. And right now, I probably see 1 or 2 companies a week that have a different take of this, and maybe oral GLP inhibitor, other type of sub-Q that have long duration, RNAi approach. So there are different now approach that if any pharma company want to explore these, there are potentially around 50 to 60 companies that are almost ready to go to phase 1, and another bunch of them are already in phase 1. Among others, Viking is one I'm following closely because they might have a differentiated approach, and they're just starting phase 3. If those data is good, I will see a potential rush in Viking company as a company to be acquired by whoever big pharma missed the boat. So I would say there is is the new thing. 10 years ago was the gene editing, and we had 10 years of gene editing company popping up left and right. 3 or 4 are actually doing something in the clinic right now. So it's the survival of the fittest, and I think we're going to see the same here. Although I would say that, the drugs right now against obesity might save few people on the way, but at the same time, the attitude of eating healthy food and exercise more is not going to change in those people that created the problem and they still have. Greg, feel free to add on top of it.
Um, when I lecture on this, I actually say that the first anti-aging drug is on the market. It's the GLP-1s, Ozempic, Mounjaro, not because they literally, slow aging, but because they address all these other health issues. Basically, they are preventative for neurological disease, kidney disease, metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease. So the great thing that I've noticed, and Bear is part of that is, and I also talked to John Simons at GSK, that the big companies are beginning to embrace prevention, and to me, prevention, goes hand in glove with longevity and health span. So couldn't agree with you more, and very excited to see it, and not my area, but really excited to see where the diagnostics take us. Because if we can diagnose Alzheimer's disease 20 years before it happens, there are actually, I think, some very exciting products for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. The diagnostic is a big point if there is a way to save those patients. Because knowing that you're going to have Alzheimer's 10 years in advance, it's not really going to help your life at the moment. So if we have something to treat you, I always take the breast cancer example. I have family history, or my woman in my family have some kind of problem with that. They all did the genetic test. There is nothing in there, but the mammography and other type of diagnosis, they can help to get something as early as possible. So it's just a minor surgery compared to what you have in your life after you get diagnosed with stage 1 or 2 of breast cancer, right? So I can see this in oncology. That really scares me. And in the US, we still don't see a broader application of those diagnostic tests especially in oncology, where you can actually do something that is highly beneficial for the patient. For example, here, the age, I think it's 40 for women. And I'm forcing my wife that is below 40 to go every 2 years for a mammography, because even if we need to pay out of pocket, because for me it's important to be diagnosed. While in Europe we have this at 35, I think the costs come very useful at the end to avoid. But this just, as Greg was saying, can be applied to anything. If you catch it early, it's better. Anything you have.
What are you most excited about in your portfolio? Which in the portfolio today and going forward, what are the areas you're like, wow, this is the next thing? As you mentioned, gene editing was. Now we have this. Where are we going next? But right now, what is the preeminent one that you think this is going to be the most dramatic change?
We have over 40 companies in our portfolio, so someone is going to get upset at me. But I have two that
you can blame it on me.
Yeah. So Greg made me say it. No, jokes aside, I'm big on oncology simply because I'm very selfish. It's the most frightening thing that can happen to families and people. So I have one company called Affinity that is now dosing patients for the first time with a new approach targeting a key mutation in KRAS, that is the oncogene. Basically, if you have this mutation, you're going to get cancer. There is nothing around it. And this is an example of precision oncology. They have a cell therapy approach with a TCR, basically a cell with a special T cell receptor that really goes on the specific target like a sniper and kill only the cells with the mutation. It's never done before. Now they dose the first 2 patients, cannot reveal, but so far optimistic data are coming up. By the end of the year, we should have around 8 to 10 patients. And I really hope we can give those patients something to go on, because these are stage 4 patients and there is nothing left. And another one is in stealth mode, is using as a specific way to get into specific tissues. And of course, one of the first approach they came up with is, obesity, going only after the adipocytes and not treating any muscle cell. That is a big problem in the current drugs, that they also make you lose muscle cells. And anyone after 6 years old needs to preserve their muscle, because it's correlated with high mortality if you lose muscle strength. So those are the two. I can mention more, but I will stop at those one, because I don't want to make it too many people upset, too many CEO upset at me.
And all the other 38 are wonderful as well. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
Over to you, Jess.
You know, Lucio, we talked last time about how many folks in the biotech world, they go on and on about having a great scientist. And one of the things that I've learned from Greg so often is maybe there isn't as much of an emphasis on having great drug developers. And that could be maybe more under the microscope. And you went on and talked about, why it matters to have a great chief medical officer and chief business officer and these kind of things. If we were going to go a little further in that, especially as we're talking this world in prevention, or maybe an area that you're trying to prepare something to sell to big pharma that maybe they haven't been in that space before. Can you talk about this idea of of course you need incredible science. If it doesn't work, that's a non-starter. But that's you need a great car to race an F1, but you also need a great driver. It's not an either or, right? So can you talk a little bit more about the, obviously you're working on things that are not just going to your parent company. You're allowed to invest in things that Bayer Corporate isn't. And so you might be thinking about these things going to another big pharma company. Can you just walk us through thought process there, or best practices from your opinion?
Yeah, mostly I hope that someone will buy the coin, because the public market right now is not a place to be for many companies. But so basically, one theory we learned in the last 10 years of investing was that even if there is great science and there is higher medical need, if you give this toy to the wrong people, it's not going to go anywhere. While a suboptimal technology in great hands can go somewhere. And I'm not just talking financial, I'm just also talking going into patient and actually treat patients. So often you see change of CEOs coming up from an early stage company to a public company, simply because the person in charge in the beginning, when you need to look at building the team, find office space, make sure you have a nice logo and T-shirt, and find the right people, is very different from a public CEO company, where you need to actually talk to bankers, you need to have earning calls, and many CEO and founder CEO can learn on the 5-year span that usually go from a seed or Series A stage to a potential IPO. If you don't learn, the board has the responsibilities to actually change and make sure that the company is in the right end. It's not, and many of my CEO, they don't want to be public CEO. They want to go to the next early thing because that's what they like. But drug developers are the key essential of the biotech. If you don't have someone that knows what they're doing, it's a no-go. You cannot really learn on the way once you get into the clinical trials, right? While you can learn on the way when you're a private company in an early stage, you can allow mistakes. The board, if it's experienced enough, will help you. If you want to learn drug development, you need to be in there with someone in charge, and you need to grasp and learn as much as possible from those people that have done this for 20 years. So that's the big difference, I know. Based on the stage of the company, if you're in clinical trials or not, then the CEO and the whole management team has to have a different vibe. Greg, feel free to add or completely go against me.
Sing into the choir, as Jess knows. So that's a great segue. So Jess comes in with a really cool new technology. It's exciting. You understand the mechanism of action. What's the checklist that goes through your mind? And, okay, does it have this? What boxes do I need to check before you'd write a check?
So usually we look at the science first. If science works and makes sense, the second part is there is a high unmet need. How many drugs are already on the market? If the disease is already well tolerated, or there is actually a need. Who are the competitors, and who is going to buy these if Bayer cannot buy? Because as we know, Bayer cannot buy all the company we invest in. We have too many.
Yes.
Yet. But that's the idea. Is those are the first 3 steps. So high unmet medical need, good science, and then we focus on the team. Of course, with the CEO and the founder, I need to spend some time with Jess to make sure we are on the same vibe. We have the same idea of what the company could be. And also we need to like each other, because this is going to be, if everything works, it's a 5 to 10 years relationship. You don't get into this without actually knowing. And that's one of the biggest mistakes some early founder find out, that going to VC that do not tolerate early stage mistakes, it might ruin you, especially if Jess is new to this, right? If never done before, but he has this crazy idea he wants to go. So there are a lot of nuance to talk about with the CEO to understand if he's going to grow into the role. If something happens, I care about the baby that is the company more than you, and you should have the same. So it would be selfish for you to stay in charge if there is someone else that can do this in a better way.
How do you do
So
it?
those are the three main checklists.
How do you get comfortable with Jess? Do you take him out for a coffee? Do you spend hours with him? How do you do it?
I do usually dinner, so at least we can have a few drinks and relax a little bit more. And I also like wine, so that's also help the line of the work. But it's more on a 2 or 3 setup where we go for dinner together and we talk about life in general, and then the next one we'll talk more about the business plans. And then usually there is a third date, I call it, where we come in and say, okay, we're going to help you fundraising. We cannot be alone in this. Let me connect you with few investors. And then I usually grasp some feedback on how Jess pitched to the others, how he presented himself. And it does not always work. Some people are very good in the first 3 dates, and then doesn't go the way that it should go. But getting the right syndicate around, I think it's important, because I might like Jess, then you come as an investor and say, I love the company, I love the technology, but that guy cannot bring the company where we want it. Our fund wants someone with at least 20 years experience into this, because we need to go big. And that's a discussion we need to have. Or maybe Jess is in the luxury position to say, I don't want Greg money. Let's find someone else. In moment of luxury where everyone wants to invest in biotech, that can happen. In moment of crisis, it's not happening. You get every dollar from anyone you can, and then deal with the consequences. So founder CEO needs to have a lot of, they have to have the ability to have a poker face with founders or investors that they don't like, but they need to work with them for the long term. So it's a tough job. It's a tough job.
3 qualities that a CEO that has to have in your mind when you're analyzing them. I need to see this, this, and this. Or what have you distilled after all these years? What are the 3 key qualities? Then, Jess, you're next up.
Are we talking about founder, new company, completely new to the world, or
The person who's managing it, whether it's a new person or a seasoned veteran, I have to see these qualities if I'm going to invest.
For me, the qualities are different. For example, for a late stage company or a seasoned CEO, I would like to see the connection he built around with investors and others, so I can cross reference him with other investors. Track record, and then on the personality, just to be a nice person overall. And then you notice this stuff at a restaurant already. Saying thank you and please to the waitress really help, to the waiter really help. I don't know. I might be wrong now 50% of the time, but I felt that I can vibe with someone within the next 2 dinners. I already know if I like someone or not. And I don't know if it's me or it's just a gut feeling, but this is the first start. Like, I like that guy or I like that woman. Then after that, you need to do your cross-reference. If you're a veteran CEO, I'm going to ask your former employees to have some feedback, some other investor that work with you. If they say, look, he's a nice guy, but he's such a pain to work with because he doesn't listen, right? This is going to be a red flag. And from the early stage, like, I'm new to this, I'm a scientist and I want to be a founder, I really look at the capacity of getting feedbacks and change the trajectory as they come, because that's going to be his life or her life for the first 5 years. They see, oh, the company is doing obesity. Now, wait, now it's doing hypertension because the investors are shifting on their way for several reasons. Now we're back to that. We're going to have 4 pipelines project. Now we're going to have 1 because we need to save capital. So listening to the board, having the ability to present yourself to the board and be strong on your idea, but able to be flexible as well. It's a key trait that we find out helps our CEO. And an early discussion with them and say, look, for the first 3 years for this fundraise, I promise you're going to be in charge if things don't go sideways. Next step, the company is going to be in the clinic. You need to get ready to be that guy. Otherwise, you're going to be on the board. You're going to be the founder, but we need someone that does deal making, right? And so it's a discussion. I always go for transparency, and usually works well. So nothing is hidden. I won't treat you very nice and then say, by the way, the day after we sign, you're out. You will know if you're out. You're laughing, but it happened a few times with another investor that they were super nice, and then the CEO just received an email saying that we need to talk. So I don't do that, and many investors don't do that, but there are some that are more focused on technology and how to put this in the best shape possible. Helps also that I don't have the pressure as institutional VC that you need to return fund as fast as possible. As a corporate VC, you tend to be a bit more founder friendly, and this helped to create a lot of relationship that in the last 10 years really helped to get new deals in as well.
That's fascinating. It leads me to another question. If I remember right from our last conversation, you guys invest about $300 million a year.
Roughly, yeah. It's not budgeted in, but we so far we spent maximum 300 in the past. Yeah.
Okay. So is it kind of like 250 to 300? What's kind of the typical range for a year?
Some years we have done 200, some years we have done 300. We are very opportunistic. We don't have a budget that we need to spend. When we see something we like, we go for it. In the beginning, we did 12 deals in a year, so that was horrible times to be around. But it was heavy lifting. But now those companies are in the clinic, so now it's time to see if our bets were right or not.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question. Is with 200 or 300 million, how diversified you are, how many different companies you're supporting, and how many rounds you expect to do with them. Like, we want to put in, is it 1 million to begin with, 10 million to begin with? How much at the next phase? What is that life cycle look for diversification and amount?
So the diversification, we go for therapeutic areas. So we have several investment in oncology, autoimmune disease, cell therapy, and genetic disease. Those are the three big areas we invest in. There was a reason for doing that is also kind of aligned with our pharma request. But as you know, pharma requests change on every year or two. So we place our bets knowing that this is going to work in the next 3 to 5 years to see if actually is a good bet or not. And regarding the tickets, usually anything between 5 to 50 million is doable, depending on the stage of the company. And we follow the company through IPO. Once the company goes public, then it's not in our hands anymore. As a public company, buyer we cannot be already on public boards. So we drop our board seat, and we don't want to know anything about the company unless it's a public news, because we are able to sell them and buy company in a different way. But usually when we do in seed stage, we follow through the whole process up to IPO. Of course, we need to also say that how we syndicate is important, because we don't want to be the only deep pocket around the table, right? It happened in the beginning. It was a mistake because we were excited about the technology. We were excited about the management. But the other investor didn't have the capacity to come in when there was a crisis in the biotech world. And so guess who is going to pay for the extra share price next time? And so this is something we are trying to mitigate. In the last 5 years, we always combine ourselves and syndicate it with like-minded investors that also have a track record of being around at least 10 years and are not the new guys on the block. I'm not saying that that they are bad. It's just saying that it's a mitigation for us to have a mix of investors, not just the new guys or the new fund or the Korean only fund, right? Those one are the one that we like to welcome them, but has to be combined with big names and investors that have track record.
Yeah, Greg, what kind of questions does that bring up for you?
I'm always thinking of the audience and what can they learn from Lucio. And 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 how to think about it, how to think about the management that you've already been discussing is very helpful. So we're doing a follow-up call, the three of us, in 3 years. What do you think we're going to be talking about as the exciting area that we should have invested in today? That's de novo, and like, boy, we should have got on that train early.
That's a tough one. So I think the cell therapy space applied to non-oncology and neurodegenerative disease, but applied to autoimmune and inflammation are going to have a spike within the next year or two. I've seen some early ideas bubbling up right now. If any one of them shows some data in the clinic, I think we're going to have this increase of different use of cell therapy. Because so far, cell therapy has been useful in few indications, but the problem is the manufacturing and the distribution of those drugs that are live cells, right? So every pharma company or every investor that has cell therapy needs to look at autoimmune and inflammation as the next big wave, simply because we already have the tools. We just need to apply on the other side of the immune system. And I think that would be the easy way. Then if you're asking if there is the next gene editing or the next, I don't know, I wish I knew. I could be way ahead of it, but the trend seems to right now is, and I think it's the crisis that we're facing right now. Biotech is now on the best shape on the public market or in the private market. I think that's also is forcing VC to be a bit more creative on what they already have in the house and what they can do with it, instead of just looking for always for the next big thing. I think that we're going to have 1 or 2 years of this reshaping what they have before they go with the next wave of innovation that I believe would be still within the cell therapy, but easier way to manufacture, cheaper way to distribute. That will really pop up, the stem cell and cell therapy.
Just a quick refresher course for the audience. How are you defining cell therapy in the context of inflammation and autoimmune? Are we looking at T cells, B cells? What are we looking at?
Even T cells, or B cells, both of them can work. The T cell side basically to reduce the expression of immunostimulatory cytokines, on the B cells to produce new antibodies to protect you against your own autoantibody that you have in autoimmune disease. Those are the big two branches that right now we have the tools for oncology. I think soon it's going to be applied to autoimmune, simply because it makes total sense and is getting as a hot topic within the life science field.
So there's public companies, obviously, with CAR-T and the other things.
Yeah.
So if I'm an investor and I don't have an MD or PhD, is there a buzzword like CAR-T or iPSCs? Is there something I should be looking for and go, great management team, and they've checked this box, they are in this part of cell therapy? Because I agree with you. I think the transition from oncology to inflammation, autoimmune, is going to be a big deal. It's actually probably the biggest thing they're going to be doing. Anyway, what are the buzzwords? What should they be looking for if they see it? We specialize in.
Yes. So many companies, they have autologous. So the big differentiation is autologous and allogeneic, right? Autologous means your own cell. Yeah. I mean, you're the MD, you should go for it. But autologous is basically your own cells treated in the lab in a petri dish, grow with something extra on it. Sometimes it's a T cell receptor. Sometimes is a flag that will trigger the immune system. And those cells basically will be grown to a certain number and then re-injected in your own body. And hopefully now they're stronger, they're better, and they can fight whatever disease. Usually it's oncology. We believe that on the other side of autoimmune is going to work. The other buzzword is allogeneic. That means that these cells can go from me, I produce it, can go to you, or can go to Greg. That is not a big deal unless you have to have the HLA match. But the idea is to have this one on top of a shelf and cryopreservation. You have the patient, you treat the patient with this specific mutation or this specific cancer, give those cells, And the idea is that those are going to be big, and it's not going to be the problem of storage and delivery. And some town in the US would never see autologous cell therapy because they don't have the whole set up to do it. While allogeneic can actually be stored at your hospital it's going to take one room to potentially treat 100 patients. So those are the two buzzwords. While autologous is what you see in the clinic, allogeneic is the future. Every company is trying to do autologous first to show that it works, and then prove that once it works, now we can potentially make it available for everyone, and you don't have to have your own cells. Especially for oncology patients, they don't have a strong immune system that can, give you a lot of cells. So you need to grow them, and most of them, when they get transfected with what you need the cells die. So you lose material on the way. It's it's not very cost effective way to do it. So the two words are allogeneic and autologous. Then there is CAR-T, that is basically a receptor added to it. Or there is iPSC cells that are induced pluripotent stem cell, that basically I take a cell from your skin with a swab, and from that one I can create any type of cells I want. So far they are working on cardiomyocyte, and they are working on neurons for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, for Parkinson's disease mostly. And for cardio, you can have heart infarction, basically the fibrotic tissue that after a heart attack is there. You can basically put those cells on top of it and make sure that they recover. They might have problem like arrhythmia, but it's still in the process. So as a safe bet would be probably the CAR-T approach in oncology is the safest bet, because they're going to show data and the public market will get excited and the share will go up, I hope. The allogeneic is more on the next 5 to 10 years future. We are going to see some company be bullish enough to try this in human and see how it goes.
Give me one name of a public company that you think
I won't.
Oh, darn.
I won't.
Oh, you thought we could get other than Bayer. You've got to have struck some chords with you,
I won't, and I don't want people to use that stock as I won't, but we can talk
there's
private.
three that I think are well positioned with the CAR-T, and just the immune system, the cancer and autoimmune are just two sides of a coin. And one, the immune system is not aggressive enough, and the other, the immune system is too aggressive. So fine-tuning this, which Lucio is talking about, is going to be really key, and is going to enormous opportunity. But I'm sure that having a syringe in every hospital in the United States, Europe, globally, that has cardiomyocytes in it, that somebody comes in a heart attack and I just simply go in the fridge and inject it to reverse things is just science fiction becoming science. It's compelling.
Now the ER doctor is coming back. You see?
Yeah. That'd be manna from heaven.
Yeah.
Jess.
No, but that would even bone cells for fractures, and it can really help. We just need to be a little bit patient, because those things can be dangerous, can create additional problems. So you need to be, baby step towards that. While in oncology, you're more allowed to make mistakes, because the patients you're getting are really on the last hope. So at that point, you can be a bit more bold and trying to treat patients.
And maybe I'm like dumbing it down too much for this conversation, but let's step back for 1 second. Like when you say autoimmune diseases, I think about our exposure in our family to that. We've got family members with lupus and thyroid issues, and I've got some education on autoimmune. I'd love to know if there's other autoimmune diseases specifically you're thinking of. But inflammation, when people think about, like, you guys say inflammation, but what are people hearing in the doctor's office? Like what is that disease? What is that condition that's inflammation related? Lucio, do you want to start off and then Greg maybe add to it?
I don't know. Apart from the like multiple sclerosis of even type 1 diabetes is basically related to autoimmune and inflammation. The inflammation is basically the treatment of the symptoms of the disease. While curing autoimmune disease, we really need to go after the antibodies that are damaging your internal organs. So is autoimmune disease, AD and inflammation, they really go next to each other, really. The problem is sometimes inflammation is not caused by the autoimmune disease or autoantibody, but it just goes for something else. And then at that point, the mechanism activated by the immune system is exactly the same. Strong reaction. And one other strong reaction we have seen is cytokine release from virus infection or even from CAR-T or cell therapy approach. So all those needs to be managed, and wherever as the key to manage this inflammation balance is in for a ride, because sometimes you need it to pop up and put the pedal on the gas really strong for oncology. Some other times you need to really reduce inflammation, like in autoimmune. So it's a very tough balance. As today, there are new type of cells, subtype of cells that we are learning that 10 years ago science didn't know. Delta gamma cells are completely new, because now with the new technology we can find that the immune system and immune defense is way more complex than what we had in mind. Greg, feel free to add on it, because I can talk for hours about it.
And 95% of what we probably know about the immune system we've learned in the last 5 years. I mean, it is that profound. So that's why I completely agree with Lucio. The next huge area is inflammation. And you and I, Jess, have talked about it. Chronic inflammation, osteoarthritis. Chronic inflammation, probably the brain is part of inflammation, is the Alzheimer's. Inflammation causing scarring, causing fibrosis. Huge areas. If people can figure out how to fine tune this. Back to you, Jess.
So I know we're going like super basic here. One more time, maybe Greg will go for you first. Thinking, you're talking to an investor who is a smart individual but has zero background. Or you're talking to my teenagers. You're talking to my teenagers to tell them what actually is inflammation, like what's going on in the body with inflammation.
So basically, inflammation is a very positive, thing. If you get a cut, you want histamines and all sorts of things to rally to the site to do what they do. But you get a mosquito bite, it's annoying, because it comes in and causes the same reaction. So it's a very positive process that we absolutely need. But the body seems to have trouble fine tuning it. So sometimes it overreacts and it begins to destroy your pancreas and you get diabetes, sometimes multiple sclerosis, and it destroys the myelin sheath. So, the very thing that we harness, and unless somebody knows that we don't know how that suddenly kicks into gear, and suddenly begins to destroy things. Lucio, how would you refine that?
I will just add another example of, we all faced the pandemic and COVID, and most of the time the virus was not really killing the patient or wherever got infected. It was the cytokine storm or the high level of inflammation that if you already have lung issue, it will just kill you. So inflammation is, for explaining to a teenager, is the best thing can happen to your body when it's needed. When there is a germ or virus, inflammation is there to fight. It's your armies, the Marines, it's everyone all combined, right? Sometimes they go rogue, and we don't know why. And when they go rogue, it's a tough for any medical expert or any scientist to explain what happened there. And so having the ability to fine tune, and we're learning a lot from autoimmune disease. So the learning from autoimmune will soon be transferred to chronic inflammation, or just inflammation as it shouldn't happen, but you got it. So you go to the hospital, it's going to be steroids, and what else you can give them? I don't think anything more than steroid, and some immune suppressor. But this is a one-time treatment that if you don't get on time, you might die. So the inflammation is something the body needs to fight, but sometimes they go rogue, and it's really hard to bring them back.
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm now making more of the leap. I appreciate the explanations. Greg, back to you.
So I'm still curious if you were trying to teach somebody how to invest in biotech, Lucio, what would be?
I hope someone will teach me. No, jokes aside, you need to have passion for the field. It's definitely not easy. I like the field because apart from the money involved, it really, if you have a good bet, you can actually save people. And as I say in the past, I'm very selfish because I know one day I might be the patient and I want the best drug out there that can save my life. Um, so the idea is that if you have passion for it, you should look into it. If you don't, you should talk to people that have a passion for it. And just this is exactly what you're doing with Greg. I believe I have a passion for it as well. So getting I won't say myself as an expert, but get someone that has done these will really help. It's the same as buying a car. If you see a Tesla owner, you're gonna ask them before buying, like, how do you feel with a car? Do you like it? Same for it. Investing in them. If you have a passion, then you're gonna read a lot of papers. You're gonna read about the market. You're gonna be about the new technology coming out, and you're gonna have hope that this thing is gonna work. And then you can contribute with investing in public company, investing in funds that have biotech specifically. If you don't have passion, please don't. It's not a game for someone that has no clue of what we're talking about because it's complex. It takes time to learn. Each of us that is in the field has at least 10 years of degrees, somehow studying long hours on books that most of the people hate to even open. So this is the key. And this is what happened during COVID pandemic. It happened that lots of general investors came into the biotech thinking that everyone is the new Moderna and they're going to make a lot of money out of it. And as soon as they got burned, they left. And that's the current situation we face in 22. And now 23, I think 24 is getting better. I hope Q1, Q2 next year, we're going to be in a new big wave of biotech. We both hope, Greg. But that was the biggest problem. It was a big party, everyone invited, and then when the reality checked in, it's not that easy to get a drug from nothing to patient. A pandemic was what Moderna was not planning on, but they were ready. They were ready in a short period of time, but that's not the norm. The norm is you go through clinical trials, you fail 90% of the time, and the time that you win big. And I'm sometimes just disappointed because the science makes sense. As soon as you inject the patient, it doesn't make sense anymore. And it's like, whoa, how do you predict that? You cannot predict. You just need to hope that what you're trying to do and fail is for a bigger cause. It's not just to make money. It's actually to save people from this specific disease. And so that's the hope that, at least I have every day when I work is okay, financially makes total sense. But if these things work, like we have a company called Genesis, they're doing science fiction, something that 5 years ago was impossible. We are basically the company is getting genetically modified pigs to be as human as possible genetically, and give kidney to patient to give them basically a kidney that they should have wait between 6 to 8 years in the US to get a kidney. So their life is three times a week dialysis for 4 hours. You cannot work, you cannot do anything. You cannot even take your kids to a playground, nothing. Your life is going there. So this company in the past, companies similar to that, they failed because there were two big problems. The rejection from the pig immune system to the human immune system, they don't match. So the organs will be rejected by the body. And the other one was something they called PERV, the porcine retrovirus. And those one at the time, FDA thought that was the new HIV. So everything stopped at the time. Then gene editing came, and the Genesis built a pig that is completely removed from any ability to create this virus and any potential rejection from the human body, because everything that they need to match, they match. And beginning of this year, they have a compassionate use for a patient that was ready to go. And he survived 6 extra months with our kidney. The patient died for other problems that were not related to the kidney transplant. But we give this man 6 months. 6 months to put his stuff in place, to stay with his, niece, grandkids. For me, it was just mind blowing. And like, I was from the beginning. I saw we were fighting about how many mutation this kidney can have, and now it's in human and it's working. So this is the thing. But you cannot really go by yourself in such a big field and say, okay, now I read few news, I'm going to invest into this. If you don't have the passion, go for someone that's done it and can advise you. And that would be my approach. When I don't know about something, I ask people that are way better than me in that one, and off I go.
Yeah, I'm so with you.
Jess, can I add something?
Yeah.
I'm going to say two things, and then I'm going to ask you the question, Jess.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I completely agree with Lucio. I mean, you want to follow smart people. So if you see an expert and somebody like Lucio has invested, he's done his diligence and stuff like that, you can feel that it's checked a lot of boxes to get to the point where you are being given the opportunity. And it's an odds game. Lucio and I are going to be wrong, 50% of the time, maybe higher. But when we're right, the numbers are extraordinary returns. So you've got to do multiple bets. It's an area you're passionate about. That makes it a lot easier to read up on it. But fundamentally, follow great, smart people where they've gone. Jess, you've been doing this with me for about a year and change, almost a year and change. What are your things that you would say, this is what I need to see to make an investment? How would you decide to invest in a company that Lucio has?
That's a good one.
Yeah. So I would just say this. The more I dig into it, the more I have such a deep belief in Warren Buffett style investing. And Warren is totally against buying something before it has a cash flow stream. And he wants to value it based on its future cash flow stream. And so by definition, he doesn't invest in, he calls it, the ball before it's left the pitcher. He's not taking a swing before the ball's left the pitcher's mitt. That's the way he says it. And yet he really talks about this idea that risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. And that strong investment returns come from someone who's investing within their circle of competence. And so I look at, I took this class at Harvard on venture capital, and they basically showed us the real data that as an industry, private equity and venture capital, they make all this money, but as an entire industry, they lose all of that plus 2% as a thing. And so he just said, all of you people in this room should quit being so proud of yourselves that you made it out of investment banking into your fund. You haven't now, you're not as good as you think you are. As an industry, you're losing 2%. And yet you have the Sequoias of the world who I'd argue it's in their circle of competence. They're no amount of talking can make up for the fact that they have repeat win after repeat win after repeat win. And so this idea that it could be there's Warren Buffett calls his style of investing a religion of investing. And he fully acknowledges that other people have different religions of investing that work for them. And so for me, okay, Sequoia is one. So I look at this world and I start hearing this exciting thing about somebody and I'm I start getting sold on it. And then I talk to somebody else and I'm like, oh, wow, that is a lot more risky than I had realized, And so this idea of Warren Buffett does not plan on getting every investment. He plans on having a certain amount of failures. And so he only needs so much diversification because he has so little failures. But because he's doing deals that are so safe, he kind of has limited upside in the short term because of the type of deals. And so for me, it's this idea of what I'm more and more coming to the conclusion is look at the stats. In regular venture capital tech, we have a 1 in 50 outlier. If you're in California, that average is about 9 billion. In biotech, we're talking early stage, it's more like a 1 in 10 outlier. And then by the time you get to the clinic, across all drugs, it's a third of the time you're actually going to get from one phase to the next, which is a huge uptick, right? And so for me, it's okay, it's not that different than Warren Buffett in the sense of you need to properly diversify for the risk you're trying to take and, for lowering your risk enough, but doing deals that can make up for all the risk plus what it is. It's a really long way of saying, find somebody with a track record who's going to give you enough diversification that you're actually in the right kind of venture-backed deals. So the statistics here apply. And that all the fundamentals you guys said is what I need to look for in the fund manager or the investors that I'm backing. It's the reason I just follow Greg around. It's he did it for 2 decades over and over. I keep fact checking him for a year. All his friends keep saying the same things. And he is so honest about his failures And I'm like, okay, this is somebody who is not just a salesman. They're a true professional, a deep investor. And so the podcast is great. I keep collecting people like them and learning from them. And it just keeps confirming this idea for me over and over. So I know that's a long answer and I know we're out of time. Greg, do you want to make any comments on that? And then
I want Lucio to comment on what you've said.
Yeah.
No, I think he's been saved by the bail. I think it's fair enough. It's not for it's not an easy field to be in. It's very rewarding, and I just want to add that many companies don't even get into the clinic before get acquired because the idea is hot, it has potential, and then might not work, but you still make some good returns out of it, even if you don't treat patients.
Love it. Well, we want to get you to your next thing and say thank you again for spending so much time with us today.
My pleasure, Greg. Jess, to the next time.
Yeah, bye everyone.